Hello everybody, Nick again here at Scoggin-dickey. We appreciate you stopping by for another one of our weekly tech videos. Actually, we're still out here at the shop from last week's 4.3 DoD delete video, and we're going to use the cam gear to show you guys what VVT is, how it functions, and if you need to put a limiter or even delete it entirely. Now, one of the things I'm going to point out is the 4.3 Gen 5 based V6 I got here from last week's video, as well as all Gen 5 small blocks that are in your 2014 and up trucks, your 6th Gen Camaro, C7 and up Corvettes, they all have VVT just like some of the later Gen 4 LS engines. They all have slight differences to them. So when you're doing a VVT limiter or maybe a VVT lockout to kind of delete it entirely for a bigger cam, the kits are different. The kit today we're going to be using is from Comp Cams, but keep in mind there are a few different part numbers for different years. Some of these are different. They do different degrees. The limiter needs to be sized differently. Don't worry about that. We have them all on our website. And of course you can always call us if you need to figure out exactly which one fits your application. Now, if you've landed on this video, not only are you probably trying to figure out A, how to do this, but maybe even a little bit of B, why they have it, why it needs to be limited, and maybe even how it functions in a stock application. In our DoD videos, we always talk about that if you're going to be using a stock cam, or at least a very, very mild upgraded cam, to keep VVT. VVT is a good thing. It is a system completely different from displacement on demand like we've shown in some of our DoD delete videos. While it does involve the camshaft, they are two separate functions involving the same part. So don't get confused. You can keep VVT and it is recommended, but it is recommended to limit it or even delete it by some cam manufacturers. When you start getting to a bigger cam, you can't use this function. It won't function properly, and you need to either limit it or delete it entirely. And we're going to show you why they initially have it. This actually is from engine tuning way back in the day in racing. If you take a camshaft in relation to the crank and you advance it or retard it in terms of degrees, you can actually shift the power band or maybe even the peak power and torque a little bit. For instance, if you advance the cam a few degrees, 2, maybe 3 degrees total, you actually pick up a whole lot of low end torque and can kind of shift the power band down a little bit. So some racers would use that to kind of fine tune their engines down to perfection. And again, if you retarded the cam, you might pick up a little bit of power in the top end, maybe broaden the power band up top, but then lose a little bit on the bottom end. Great for when you're needing a little extra edge, or you really just needed to fine tune it again. The beauty of it is, this system will actually retard or advance the cam as needed. And the computer does it. It does it through this front actuator on the front here of the timing cover. And it does it because you can take advantage of both of those. You can advance it when you're needing low end grunt. You know, it sings, the computer sing load like a tow, or maybe you're just romping on it. If you got like a 5th Gen Camaro that's got VVT, if you got an auto 5th Gen Camaro, they came with it. It builds a low end torque. And then as it goes through the RPM range in that gear, well, then it starts to retard that timing and really pick up high end horsepower. And they did that in testing. We've seen the graphs, and they show a much broader torque and horsepower curves. It was really a great thing to add into it. They're truly a trouble-free design. We really almost never see a failure with one of these systems unless somebody's put in a monster cam and for some reason tried to keep it. And I'm going to show you kind of a little bit of how that functions. Now, a lot of y'all have seen this. It's the cam bolt. I got it threaded in the old cam here from this V6. They all look like this. It is a cam bolt. You can see the threads there on this hand here, but on the inside there, it actually is a valve, and it's got this weird tang on the end of it, and you can actually push it. When you get a chance, look at one of those and see that it's doing something on the inside where all these holes are. And there's holes on the inside of this VVT actuator, or the upper cam gear as we call it. And then there's a cam journal here with holes in it. Well, it gets oil pressure from that cam journal. It feeds it to the center. These cams are hollow. It's sealed when installed on the engine on the back end, but then it feeds oil through this bolt slash valve, and it can actually change inside of here. We're going to open this up and show you how to do one of these, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. It kind of looks like one of the, variable displacement oil pumps we showed you. It's got vanes in it, and it can actually tilt one way or tilt the other way to advance or retard. really brilliant little system that they were able to contain in just a very simple setup. But let's pretend you're putting in a pretty big can, maybe one of our grinds, or an aftermarket one, and you got to either limit this or delete it. Well, today we're going to show you how to take it apart. Again, we are using a CompCams kit. There are a few different kits out there. We like these because if you've never done one before, they include everything. Not only do they include little parts and pieces, they even include the T25 bit you're going to need to undo some of these bolts. Include the limiter itself, which is this block. We'll show you that in here in a minute. This tool here that uses a socket wrench to release the spring pressure on the back. Again, show you that in a minute. And a bolt here. If you're wondering what this is for, this is simply just an installation tool, like little assist. On the back side is this very thin piece of sheet metal. This is actually containing the spring behind it. It is a coil spring. It's all bound up and it's pretty snug. And you can also see that kind of looks like the same pattern from like an LS3 timing gear, because that's also where it gets its cam signal. When you remove these, do not pull or push on this. Be gentle with it. Always grab it by the teeth, not that. These are under a spring load. They come apart, and like I said, they are under a high pressure. I haven't met anybody that's done it, but I imagine their face might be disfigured if I did. I've been told that this is under a lot of pressure, so that's why they include this. You put this through the middle, and you just do it hand tight just to hold it, so in case of a slip up, it has no chance of boing, popping up and smacking you in the face or the chest and possibly doing some serious damage. So let's put this together. Let's dig in and show you how to do this. And now that you got that bolt put into the center, again, you're just doing it hand tight so this thing doesn't pop off and wreck your face. You're going to hook up this claw tool here to your 3/8 ratchet. You're going to put it on the tight setting of the ratchet to righty-tighty. And you're going to put this to loosen the tension of this coil spring behind this little thin piece of sheet metal. And I'll show you that now. That little edge is going to grab there, perfect. And then we can take this and use that tension to undo it. When you do that, this little musical note looking piece right here, it's going to slide into these holes on the tool and lock it in here. It keeps that tension spring undone so we can turn this back around and open it up and put in our limiter. So let's go ahead and get locked in. Yeah, that's what it is. There we go. Now that we have the spring lock, we're going to do a close-up shot to show you exactly how this little tang locks into place through these round holes, not the square holes in this tool, to hold that spring undone so we can work around to the backside. And now that we've done that, let's turn this thing around and start taking it apart. And with a couple of adapters, I went ahead and still using my 3/8 socket. I used a 1/4 inch socket, and we used the little T25 bit that they include with it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you can see the way that I've oriented this on the vise, using a rag so we don't damage the teeth, but I've also clocked it a certain way. And I've clocked it because of this. One of these bolts is that spring retaining pin, and now that it's undone, we need to make sure that we know which one's which. It's going to be the one right here. Pause the video, take a picture, make sure you don't forget. This is going to have to go back in the same spot. The other bolts are the same. We're going to loosen the bolt right underneath it, right here, but not take it out. This is going to be the one that this assembly pivots on and rotates out of the way so we can get inside. So let's dig this thing apart. So now that we got this cover unbolted, except for this one pivot bolt like we talked about at the bottom, and remember the bolt above it is the one with the retaining pin for the spring. And as you can see, I'm going to hold them up here so you can see them. There you go, camera focus just right. That little pin right here, see how it's longer? Make sure, put that back in the right spot. And when you release that spring pressure, you're gonna run into more trouble. Now, we use this little center bolt that they included to hold that spring and this cover back here. But now that we're in it, we're gonna have to take it off. Just take it off nice and slow with your hands. Again, that's why we did it finger tight. And now very carefully, swing this thing out of the way. And there we are. Now we can get kind of a better look at what does the function of the VVT. And yeah, it's got little veins here, kind of looks like an oil pump. And that valve will adjust pressure on either one side of one of these veins or the other side to advance or retard the timing. Pretty brilliant, pretty simple. Actually, if you work on a newer Ford, a newer Gen 3 Hemi, and of course any of the Gen 4 and up engines that have VVT, it is actually all the same principle, just done a little bit different. So, pretty neat little function, nice little tidbit to know about. Now, you have your limiter or delete block. Now, depending on the cam you buy, whoever sells you the cam will have a recommendation, possibly even the one to sell you. And it's these little blocks right here. Nice little machine piece of steel. And that's all it is. They can either limit it to certain degrees. Keep in mind, these actually can do anywhere between 56 to 60 degrees back and forth. Of course, it doesn't function like that in the vehicle, but as you can see, the space in here is huge, and so that's what we're needing to limit. Sometimes, milder performance cams, you just need to lower this a little bit. You just need to not let it have that much movement. So you still get some VVT function, but for the most part, it's pretty locked out. It keeps the valves from crashing into the pistons on the engine. This one we're going to lock out entirely. We are doing some cam testing on this engine. We're wanting to lock it out entirely so we can actually get true apples to apples to apples comparisons for all the different cams we're using. So let's put this block in. So you're going to put your limiter or even your complete delete in the bottom slot here. It actually really doesn't matter, but we always put them in the bottom one here. And you can see what I'm talking about. This would limit it. If we slid this in here, it would still have some range of motion. But if we put the big one in here, it would actually delete it entirely. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Now keep in mind, they do have this groove cut for a reason. When you put it in, make sure that groove is facing towards the center and is facing towards the back. Now, let's put this back together. Again, we're just going to rotate that cover back over. And again, the long one with a little pin on the back, make sure it goes back in this about 2 o'clock position like we had it. And you'll be torquing these down to 85 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. So I already got a nice little torque wrench here. We're going to get it all snugged up. So I hand snugged them back in, and I went ahead and put the center bolt back in because now we're going to be releasing this tension after I torque it down, and you still want that bolt there to help protect you. Again, 85 inch-pounds, and you do it in a star pattern, just like you did the lug nuts on your truck or car this morning. Now that we're done torquing them, it's just as simple as then doing what we did. We're going to turn this back around. We're going to use our 3/8 ratchet to again release this pin that was, or this little crossbone that was holding everything together, undo the tension, and remove the bolt. And after that, it's ready to go back into your engine, whether you limited it or deleted it. Now we appreciate you guys very much stopping by for another one of our weekly tech videos. Again, we got our idea from this from customers that were calling and asking how it functioned and what to do about deleting it or limiting it. We thank y'all very much for giving us ideas for these videos. We try to make one every week for you guys to help out hot rodders like you and me. So please give us a like, a subscribe, and a share on both Facebook and YouTube and all your social media. Share this with your friends and hot rodders so you can help them out and we can keep building engines. I will see you guys next Friday. Thanks for stopping by.